Picture the dawn sky over the Donbass, a low grey lid, the distant cough of artillery, and far behind the Russian lines, a pair of Su-34s, loitering, waiting for coordinates. They're powerful, fast, and deadly, but they don't come forward. They circle, they release glide bombs from standoff range, and then they run. It's 2026, and despite 4 years of war, despite factory lines working overtime and slogans about regaining the initiative, Russia's Air Force still cannot control the sky over Ukraine. Not for lack of courage or hardware, but because the sky itself has become a trap, a modern minefield of radar cones, digital whispers, and SAMs that kill at the edge of physics. The Kremlin wanted thunderbolts. What it got was weather, contested, shifting, unforgiving. This isn't the story many expected in February 2022. Western analysts feared the VKS, the Russian aerospace forces, would kick down Ukraine's air defenses, sweep the front, and treat the battlefield like a shooting gallery. Instead, within weeks, the air war hardened into a standoff. Russian jets rarely crossed the line of contact, and when they did, they paid. Ukraine's layered air defense, from Patriots down to shoulder-fired missiles, changed the geometry of risk. Soviet-era doctrine met modern sensors and Western tactics, and suddenly the quickest way to get shot down was to be brave. Rand's sober take is as clear as it is damning. By April 2022, fixed-wing sorties beyond the front line largely stopped because the losses weren't survivable. The VKS adapted by flying lower or staying farther back, but the sky never became theirs. It became lethal, and it has stayed that way. Under the hood, this isn't a single failure. It's a system failing under modern pressure. For decades, Russia underinvested in the nasty, nerdy parts of air supremacy, the hard art of suppression/destruction of enemy air defenses, the old wild weasel craft that kicks the door for everyone else. RUSA and CNA, among others, have cataloged it. Pilot training hours too low for complex secured choreography, limited stocks of specialized weapons, and a culture that prizes scripted missions over flexible joint kill chains. When Ukraine wired those weaknesses into an integrated air defense network, the VKS met its upper limit. Sure, Russia can fly, it just can't freely fight where it matters most. How low are those flight hours? Before and during the war, a typical Russian fighter pilot logged roughly 100 to 120 per year. Transport and long-range crews often similar or just a bit more. Well below NATO norms that aim closer to 180 and cram those hours with complex scenarios. Quantity is only half the story. Quality matters more. Without the steady diet of high-threat secured training and advanced simulators, even experienced VKS aviators are pushed to the edge when the radar scopes light up. That's not a dig, it's physics and practice. In Ukraine, the difference has meant the difference between air dominance and air denial. If you're enjoying this video, hit that like and subscribe button right now. Then came the Sambush era, when Ukraine fused Western radars, decoys, and mobility into ambush geometry. On January 14, 2024, Ukraine knocked a rare A-50U airborne early warning jet out of the sky over the Sea of Azov, and damaged an IL-22 airborne command post the same night. 40 days later, another A-50U went down, reportedly to an S-200 reach out across the water. For Russia, those were not just big aircraft. They were flying brains. Lose a handful, and your picture gets noisier, your timing worse, and your pilots more cautious. And when a US Army officer publicly described how a Patriot-equipped Sambush nailed one of those A-50s, it underlined something vital. The hunters were being hunted. Russia tried to patch the hole with its long-troubled A-100 Premier program. The next-gen AWACS meant to refresh the fleet, but by late 2025, credible reports suggested the project had stalled or even been shelved, with industry chatter pointing to component problems and sanctions friction. Meanwhile, Ukraine kept striking at the existing A-50 ecosystem on the ground, damaging aircraft at bases like Ivanovo. and OSINT tallies fluctuated between 4 and 8 flyable airframes. Even if you take the higher number, it's a chilling math problem for a country waging a continental war. Too few eyes to see, too many threats to guide. You can fly without AWACS, you just do it blinder and slower. Add another wound, the bomber fleet. Through 2024 and 2025, Ukraine pushed its long-range drone campaign deep into Russia, culminating in June 2025 strikes that Western officials say damaged or destroyed around 10 strategic bombers, more than 10% of a fleet already working at full stretch. Tu-95MS and Tu-22M3 losses don't abolish cruise missile barrages, but they reduce options and tempo, drive dispersion, and make maintenance headaches migraine grade. These are Cold War airframes, and whatever Moscow's industrial bravado, replacing them quickly is a fantasy. Even Russia's friends at home privately note the production and technology drag. The effect on the night sky over Ukraine isn't instant, but strategy is compound interest, and this is the wrong direction. If the VKS can't kick down the door, it can still smash the windows. That's glide bomb warfare. After stalling at the FIBA, Russia flooded the front with UMPK glide kits, cheap, plentiful bolt-ons that turn old fabs into standoff killers. By 2024, the kits were arriving by the tens of thousands, with RUSI counting 40,000 that year and projecting around 70,000 in 2025, while Ukrainian and Western reporting spoke of 200 to 250 drops per day and plans for 120,000 kits in a single year. The result was brutal. Towns like Avdiivka and avenues of approach across the front endured daily hammer blows from 30 to 90 kilometers away, often beyond Ukraine's most dangerous SAM envelopes. Glide bombs don't win air superiority, they win rubble. Russia built a strategy around that grim distinction. Even here, the sky bites back. CSIS and others noted Ukrainian efforts to mess with GLONASS guidance, tugging some glide bombs off their aim points. When your warplan leans on cheap precision, jam resistance becomes a survival trait, and Russia's rapid, sanctions-strained electronics ecosystem doesn't always deliver it. This is electronic warfare as termite damage, small, pervasive, and expensive to fix. In a system designed for mass, little wobbles can add up to operational drift. At the sharp end, Russia's frontline fast jets have suffered enough attrition to change behavior, if not the balance. Between shoot-downs, accidents, and ground strikes, independent assessments put total VKS fixed-wing combat losses and severe damages around the low hundreds by early 2026. A manageable slice of the overall inventory, but concentrated in workhorse fleets like Su-25s and Su-34s. The numbers matter less than the message. Every crew lost teaches the survivors the same lesson. Stay back. Launch standoff weapons. Avoid the envelope where Patriots, IRISTs, NASAMs, and S-300/-125 hybrids can reach. It's tactical prudence, but strategically, it's paralysis. You can't escort, strike, and suppress at scale from 40 miles away. Consider the Su-57, Moscow's prestige jet, the aircraft meant to be seen. Where has it been seen? On satellite photos from Aktubinsk, with scorch marks around it after a Ukrainian strike in June 2024. In British and Ukrainian reporting that it mostly fires standoff missiles from within Russia, and in export brochures. The VKS seems reluctant to risk it. And why wouldn't they be? Lose a felon over Ukraine, and you don't just lose a jet. You lose an aura, a data farm, and possibly a future market. In a war where symbolism is ammunition, the Su-57 is mostly being hoarded. If there's one line you'll hear from Russian industry, it's that production is roaring. Rostec and UAC boast regular deliveries of Su-34s and Su-35s in 2024 to 2025, with press statements touting one of the most productive years, and trade outlets estimating batches that amount to several dozen new fighters and strike jets annually. That's real, and it matters. Factories are humming, and attrition is being backfilled. But you can't mass-produce tactics. New airframes enter an old problem set. thin AWACS coverage, contested airspace, and a seed suppression of enemy air defences or dead destruction of enemy air defences toolkit that still lags the threat. Without the enabling ecosystem, more jets mean more glide bombs and more standoff launches, not control of the air. Across the line, Ukraine has been rearming in the air. By April 2025, US European Command's chief publicly said Ukrainian F-16s were flying daily, with Dutch, Danish and other European donors transferring airframes and training crews. No one seriously argues that a handful of 4th-gen fighters will bulldoze Russia's IADS, but even small numbers of AMRAAM-equipped F-16s complicate Russian planning. Patrol lines move backward, the risk band widens, and trying to loiter for a clean glide bomb toss starts to look like volunteering for a Patriot documentary. If air power is about shaping choices, F-16s shape Russian caution. Meanwhile, Russia has doubled down on a parallel air war. Massed drones and cruise missile barrages designed to exhaust Ukrainian air defences and pummel the grid. October 2025 was one of the heaviest months of the war for long-range strikes. By mid-January 2026, Kyiv was burning through nearly $100 million in interceptors on some nights just to keep the lights on. Russia's drone families are getting faster and smarter. The Jiran 5 jet-powered variant, live video feeds, even anti-air tweaks for Shaheds, further compressing Ukraine's reaction windows. All of that is deadly. None of it is air superiority. It is punishment at a distance precisely because the nearer air is too dangerous. Let's zoom out and count the structural pillars of why not. First pillar, the training gap. A pilot with 100 to 120 hours a year and limited complex SEAD reps cannot, overnight, become a weasel against a fused, Western-style IADS that moves, decoys, and listens. Second pillar, the enablers deficit. Too few AWACS, an A100 program in limbo, and electronic warfare and ISR architectures that were never built for this sustained, high-end knife fight. Third pillar, industrial friction. Yes, UAC is pushing more airframes out the door, but sanctions and component shortages have forced substitutions and delays across advanced electronics, precision munitions, and even civilian aerospace. A canary for broader aerospace health. Fourth pillar, Ukrainian adaptation. Patriot SAM bushes, long-range drone strikes on bases, GLONASS spoofing, and F-16s nudging the risk envelope. Those four pillars don't just hold up a problem, they hold down the VKS. Now, some nuance before someone angrily revs a flanker in the comments. Russia's VKS is not inept, and sneering at it is how you get history exams wrong. In places like Avdiivka, massed glide bomb fires coordinated with ground pushes have pushed Ukrainian lines back when manpower and shells ran thin. The VKS is adapting, iterating fuses, ranges, and tactics, and the sheer volume of UMPK strikes in 2025 shows a system learning to get more out of less. Russia's most recent work also warns that Russian and Chinese air power threats have grown since 2020 in specific domains. So take no comfort, Leps. But adaptation is not equal to dominance. Russia can break things without breaking through. There is also the silent tax of fear. Losing 2 A-50s in 6 weeks is not just a line on a spreadsheet, it's a ghost in every mission brief. Crews who once set their orbit lines at safe enough now push them back another 10 or 20 miles. When Ukraine demonstrated it could swat targets deep in Russia, Akhtubinsk for a Su-57 on the ground, Olenia and other far north bases for bombers, the VKS learned that distance isn't safety, it's merely delay. The Kremlin can disperse, decoy, and rebuild hangars. It cannot rebuild crew confidence with a decree. War is human. Humans remember. Somewhere in a Russian planning cell, a major suggested painting A-50s like clouds, and for 3 seconds it was quiet. But the actual fixes Russia needs are unglamorous. It needs a sustainable AWACS fleet and a working replacement program. It needs larger, more frequent, more complex seed and dead exercises, not air shows, to harden the muscle memory. It needs smarter munitions with jam-resistant guidance and larger stocks of anti-radiation weapons. It needs a pilot pipeline that yields more than courage. Those are 5 to 10-year projects, even without sanctions and battlefield attrition. 2026 is not 10 years from now. It's now. So where does that leave the air over Ukraine in 2026? It is a vicious equilibrium. Russia dominates parts of the night with drones and missiles, turns towns to gravel with glide bombs, and still cannot safely escort a strike package over the heart of the front. Ukraine denies, disperses, and survives with Western IADS, new F-16 teeth, and a saboteur's ingenuity. Neither side owns the sky. Both sides rent it by the hour. That reality favours defenders and punishes any army that dreams of Soviet-style deep operations. The VKS can terrorise, it cannot transform. And even Russia's industrial surge comes with asterisks. Rostech's press lines are bullish, one of the most productive years. But independent reporting on aviation shows a sector straining to replace Western components, missing delivery targets, and pleading at international bodies about safety risks from sanctions. Military production is prioritised, yes, and Su-34/Su-35 deliveries continue. Yet the same ecosystem that struggles to build MC-21s on time or keep Airbus and Boeing airworthy without smuggling also feeds the VKS avionics and the guidance brains for its bombs. Weakness at the civilian edge leaks inward. That's not propaganda, it's a supply chain. Cue the inevitable counter, but Russia is producing so much. Glide bombs by the hundreds daily, drones by the hundreds daily. True and terrifying. Zelensky himself warned in January 2026 that Russia might be making up to 500 Shaheds a day, a claim that, even if inflated, speaks to a tempo Ukraine feels. The Guardian's reporting on jet-powered Duran 5s with faster profiles and live feeds suggests an iterative machine. But the logic is the same. Volume at standoff ranges keeps pressure high precisely because penetrating airspace remains prohibitive. When you can't take the sky, you flood it. A final factor, learning. Everyone is watching everyone. RUSI's January 2026 brief notes that Russian and especially Chinese air power threats are evolving. NATO air forces are rereading their SEAD playbooks because Russia's failure is not a guarantee of anyone else's. But for Moscow, the clock ticks louder. Every month, Ukraine flies F-16s every day. Every Patriot truck that survives to fire another Sambush. Every bomber dispersed farther from the front. The dream of a knockout air campaign recedes another mile. Dominance is not in the pamphlets, it's in the practice. And right now, the practice is denial. So here we are, 2026, and Russia's air force still can't control the sky over Ukraine. It can kill, it can punish, it can terrify, but control, the freedom to fly where you want, when you want, to support ground maneuver at scale, to blind the enemy and smash his logistics without betting your fleet every sortie, remains out of reach. The VKS is fighting under a ceiling of its own making. Training that lags, enablers too few, industry under strain, and an enemy that learned to make the sky a battlefield instead of a highway. Control of the air is a habit built in peacetime and tested in war. Russia skipped reps. Ukraine made the gym the battlefield. And in the fourth year, the score is the same as the first, contested. Which raises a sharper question for the next act. If Russia can't take the sky over Ukraine with the time, treasure, and blood it has spent, what makes anyone think it can take it anywhere else? Against fresher IADS, more AWACS, and air forces that train for this fight every week. If the answer is glide bombs and drones, then the strategy isn't air power, it's gravity. And gravity alone never won a sky. Hit like and subscribe if you want more videos like this. Bye for now.